What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome to a different kind of video. Today I wanted to talk about the new rules that are coming out with Series 8 very soon to VGC. And I think they're quite important because it shakes up the metagame quite a bit, and so normally we do Meme GC on Mondays, and so we're talking about VGC stuff, so it fits, it's fine. So there's going to be a lot in this video, and I hope that you'll stick around and enjoy that. Of course, leave a like on the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and then share this video with your friends. And down in the comments below, let me know what your opinions are, because we are not only going to be talking about what the rules are, but we're also going to be doing a tier list talking about what I think are going to be the most viable and what I think are going to be not so viable in the rule set. So it's going to be a really cool video. I hope you guys will stick around for the full thing. So we had an announcement last week saying that we are going to be allowed one restricted Pokemon in Series 8, which starts on February 1st. Now, if you haven't seen any kind of a restricted format before, basically it's like your box legendaries and other usually very powerful things. Basically anything that's considered a legendary outside of your mythicals. Mythicals have never been allowed, and so, you know, you're not going to be able to see any of those. But we do have some box legendaries and things like that that will now be legal. Now, one thing that's a little bit different is that you're only going to be allowed one of them. In past generations, when we've had restricted formats, we have had two allowed at once on a team, but now we only have one, which in my opinion really isn't that great, because I think it's going to lead to a lot of frustration, and it's going to lead to a lot of people just losing on team preview. And so if you just happen to have the wrong thing to go against what your opponent has, you just auto lose from the beginning. And I think that's a little frustrating, but that's why we're going to be doing this tier list, so maybe you won't choose some of those auto lose options, or you can give yourself some possible options in the future to get around some of those things. So let's take a look at this. So restrictions available National Pokedex, they just have to have the Galar mark or the Battle Ready mark. So same thing as in VGC, they just have to be either caught or bred in Galar, or they have the mark, which basically just deletes all their old moves, make sure that there aren't any moves from past events or anything like that. It's only things that can be learned in this current generation. And teams of 3 to 6, you're always going to bring 6, and they're all going to be set to level 50, blah, 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 blah. Restricted Pokemon, however, this is what's different, and these are the same in the singles and doubles format, so it doesn't matter here. Mewtwo, Lugia, Ho-Oh, Kyogre, Groudon, Rayquaza, Dialga, Palkia, Giratina, Reshiram, Zekrom, Kyurem, Xerneas, Yveltal, Zygarde, Cosmog, Cosmo, Solgaleo, Lunala, Necrozma, Zacian, Zamazenta, Eternatus, and Calyrex. This also includes any of their alternate forms, which we will talk about here in just a second. Of course, your Gigantamax stuff is allowed, and then we've of course got the 20-minute battle timer, 7 minutes your time, 90-second team preview, and 45-second turn time. These are all very standard as far as the rest of it goes, and then we've got us a fancy picture, which is pretty cool. They haven't announced the rewards for these yet, but this seeks to very much change up how we play VGC. So a lot of people are a little upset about this, and I don't think that it's going to be all that great of a way to play, in my opinion, because, like I said, when you only get one, if yours gets wasted very quickly, then it could end up being quite an issue. But, you know, we'll talk about it as we get into our list here, and of course we have a list of all of these right here. And so, yeah, banned ones are going to be all of your mythicals, so you won't be seeing any of these in there. Sorry for all you Mew fans, Jirachi, Victini, all that. It will not be making it. So let's go ahead and get into our tier list here. Now, this is all of the mons that will be allowed and their possible forms. And so now some of them are a little bit of a repeat, like the Zygarde going to 100%, but you know, that's an ability rather than necessarily a second form. But I did want to go ahead and cover that. And now down here below me, I'm also going to have movesets, and we're going to talk about movesets of everything, what they actually get, how they can be used. And for the ones that are a little bit more viable, I will give some example movesets as well, as far as what I think will be somewhat viable. And we'll just go in Pokedex order here. Nothing too crazy. We'll start with Mewtwo. Now, Mewtwo is not a bad mon at all, in my opinion. It's quite bulky, actually, for what it is. If we take a look at its base stats here, we do have 106 HP, 110 attack, 90 defenses, 154 special attack, which is quite high, and 130 speed. So, I mean, the thing's pretty fast, and it's got some decent bulk for what it is. I think it's decent as far as that goes. However, as far as being better than other options that are out there, like a few that I'm going to mention later, I don't think that it's going to be all that crazy. Now, obviously, Dynamaxing is a thing, and weakness policy is a thing, and so, you know, we could run a weakness policy set on pretty much everything here that can Dynamax, and so that's a little bit of a weird way to do it. But ultimately it's viable, right? And so we have to be able to watch out for that stuff. So for me, I don't think that Mewtwo is going to be anything like that. I think it's gonna end up being like a Life Orb kind of variant, and probably with Psystrike, probably Bolt Beam coverage, and then whatever else you wanna do. I think that it's definitely viable, but it's not gonna be like busted. So I'm gonna actually put this in the A tier. I think it's solid. I think it's gonna be really good, but I do not think that it is busted at all. Looking at its moves, I mean, it does get Life Dew, which is a pretty interesting support move. So being able to heal 25% is pretty nice. It gets really good coverage, Aura Sphere, Psychic. It does not get Speed Swap, which is definitely something that we could see on something that's really slow. None of these moves are all that crazy. T-Wave, maybe. Icy Wind, maybe. Yeah, I mean, these don't seem like things that are going to be, oh, there's Speed Swap, there it is. So, I mean, you could Speed Swap onto something that, you know, is really slow and make it really, really fast. So something like Ice Horse, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit, which is why I think this thing's going to be very, very dangerous. But yeah, I mean, this thing gets a lot of really good coverage. Taunt is pretty cool for shutting down setup sweepers. Calm Mind could definitely be an option. You being able to get a little bulkier. Nasty Plot, same thing. And yeah, it does actually get access to Hurricane, which is a little interesting, just being able to get the max airstream to boost speed of both you and your partner. And Expanding Force is also another thing that's interesting, because now you're going to be setting up your own terrain. So once you shrink back down, assuming you survive, you have Expanding Force, which is a spread move since you set your own psychic terrain. So definitely viable, but as far as it being busted, I don't think it's busted. Next is going to be Lugia, and I really don't think that Lugia is all that great. Yes, it's bulky. It's quite bulky actually, but its offenses leave a lot to be desired. So the only reason that someone would ever use this is a weakness policy set, and then run like Aeroblast to boost your speed. So that's the only thing that I can think of as far as it being really really useful. Does have Mist, which is a little interesting to see. But like, that's not going to be super useful. Yeah, Aeroblast is definitely going to be your flying type coverage. And then besides that, it's really not all that great. Icy Wind is a thing. Helping Hand, that's cool. Just like a really, really bulky helping hand user. That could definitely be a thing. And it gets good coverage all around. You know, you could run Bolt Beam on it, but if you run Ice Beam, you're going to end up breaking your own multi-scale, and so you really don't want to do that. You could also give multi-scale to something else with your skill swap, which is a little interesting. I don't think that that's the best thing in the world. And then of course Hurricane as well for that coverage. If you want to run physical, dual wing beat, scale shot, that's a thing, but I don't think it's going to be all that great. So I'm going to put it in C tier just because I've got D tier reserved for a couple of things. Ho-Oh. Now Ho-Oh in VGC really isn't bad. It's got a lot of really good offenses, and its typing is actually quite good, especially, again, since we're talking about Max Airstream being one of the most busted moves in the game. It's a hard counter to things like a Mungus that would like to sit in, any of your redirectors that are grass type, so that it's going to do some major damage to that. This also gets access to Life Dew, so that's another thing that helps it out quite a bit. And then of course Sacred Fire. Sacred Fire is of course one of its best moves, being able to burn things 50% of the time. That's really important. So burns are very important because you have a lot of physical attackers that want to come in, especially things like Landorus. So I mean, if Landorus isn't in and you predict the Landorus switch in, Sacred Fire burn that thing, you're going to be in really, really good shape. Obviously there are a lot of offensive rock types that run around, and so rock kind of nays this thing, so you've got to be careful with that. Helping Hand is really, really good. You could also run the Protect Imprison kind of stuff. Probably not all that viable. Bulldoze could help to set up something really slow that's weak to ground with weakness policy. But again, usually when you have this, you're probably going to want to make this into your Dynamax option, but you may have to adapt on the fly. So Heat Wave is a thing if you wanted to run more of a special set. This thing normally runs physical. Brave Bird for your offensive move there. Scorching Sands for burns, probably not going to use that all that much. But yeah, as far as like, it's got decent bulk and it hits decently hard. And the flying typing, being able to boost speed is really, really nice. So I mean, this thing it's okay, but it's not great. So I'm gonna put it in the B tier for now. Kyogre for me is very easy to tier, and it's going to go straight to the S tier. I think Kyogre is broken in this. I think Kyogre is going to be really, really good, especially with a couple of things. One, in Tailwind, you get this thing next to like a Thundurus or a Tornadus rather, with Prankster Tailwind or even a Talonflame, and you get this thing going really fast. Modest with either Origin Pulse or Water Spout coming off of whatever this thing wants to run, that's gonna absolutely drop teams. I mean, it's incredibly powerful. This thing's stats are very, very high, and it's got really good coverage. So you're probably gonna run like 2 water moves, Origin Pulse and the Water Spout, Ice Beam, and Thunder, just for your own coverage. Yeah, this thing's gonna be insane. You could run Specs, you could run a Scarf if you don't want to do the if you don't want to do the Tailwind. Yeah, this thing is it's a little slow at like 90. I believe it's 90 speed, but it can be made up for. It also gets Icy Wind if you wanted to run more of like a bulky support mon, so that's also an option for you. Bulldoze, again, being able to set up something for Trick Room if you wanted to have this be like a Trick Room enabler. So helping out something that does work in Trick Room is pretty cool. But yeah, I think this thing's gonna be absolutely insane. I for sure think that this is gonna be S tier. Groudon. Now Groudon was absolutely insane last generation with its primal form. If you don't remember, Primal Groudon last gen was the #1 used mon in VGC. It's very, very strong. It hits like a truck, it's very bulky. That additional fire typing it got really helped it with doing damage with Fire Punch, and Eruption and Lava Plume and all that good stuff. Well, it lost that form. And so that loss of the fire typing plus the loss of the ability Desolate Land really hurts this thing a lot. It's definitely not useless, but it's definitely nowhere near as useful as it used to be. It also isn't nearly as bulky as it was with that, and so the special set becomes a lot less viable in my opinion. I really think that the special set really isn't going to be seen all that much, and I think this is just going to be kind of a bulky, kind of sit there and take hits from opposing really offensive mons. So you'll probably see this thing really bulky, and just trying to sit there and soak up hits. Obviously things like Kyogre are going to absolutely nay this thing, especially if the Kyogre Dynamaxes. It's just going to blow right through this right through the Groudon rather. And so I think Groudon has had his heyday, and I don't think it's going to last much longer. I don't think that it's terrible, but I really don't think that it's great anymore. So, you know, we do still have Eruption, but I could definitely see this thing running just Precipice Blades. Stomping Tantrum could be a thing that you run on that. Stone Edge. Yeah, I really don't see this thing being insane anymore. Yeah, I'm not feeling this thing going nuts anymore. So yeah, Precipice Blades, probably another ground type move, and then Fire Punch, and then coverage or whatever fits there in the next slot. Yeah, I don't think this thing's going to be insane. I don't think it's going to be great. I'm going to have to put it in the B tier for this generation, which is odd to say considering how high it was last gen, but I really don't think it's going to be as good this generation. Next is Rayquaza, and Rayquaza, again, with its Mega Evolution, that thing was nuts. Could you imagine Mega Rayquaza with Max Airstream? No, I don't want any of that. That would be absolutely insane, and I'm very glad that that's not a thing. So yeah, Rayquaza now isn't as great as it used to be. I mean, its base stats aren't garbage, but they aren't insane either. So 105 HP, 90 defenses, it's okay. 150 attacks are both really good, and then 95 speed. So it definitely is going to be going for Max Airstream to try to boost its speed up. So you'll probably see, you know, Dragon Ascent is going to be an absolute must use. Dragon Dance, maybe Extreme Speed for being able to pick off certain things, maybe Outrage, possibly like a Dragon Claw if you don't want to get locked into Outrage. This thing's got a lot of coverage. Swords Dance is also a thing, so you know, have Redirection, Swords Dance, and then start boosting your speed with some Max Airstreams. That could be scary. Bulk Up is also a thing. Yeah, I mean, this thing's got the coverage, and also Meteor Beam, which is an odd one, but I mean, it makes sense. You know, it's so used to doing all the space things, all the hyper beams and all that stuff. So, you know, Meteor Beam definitely makes sense for this thing to have. I don't think that we're gonna see Meteor Beam on this thing very often. That seems a little odd, but you know, I mean, it could be a thing. Redirection, Meteor Beam to get the +1, and then, you know, max into Hurricane. Because I mean, its offenses are equal, so it's not like you're losing out on anything. And then just coverage from there. So I mean, that could be a thing. That could definitely be a thing. So yeah, watch out for special Rayquaza coming to a tournament near you. But as far as it goes, I think it's good. I don't think it's great. I think it's good enough to make it to A tier. I think it's better than these two, but I don't think it's as good as Kyogre at all. Dialga, next one. Dialga is interesting. I know it's a fan favorite and everybody's talking about the remakes of Gen 4 and everything, and we want Dialga and Palkia to be great. Dialga is really not great. It has good typing. Steel Dragon is actually pretty decent typing. It is weak to ground, which isn't great. Yeah, that hurts it a lot. And its coverage isn't insane, but it has decent stats. It also has Trick Room, which definitely gives it some viability. It being as bulky as it is and having access to Trick Room, it also having access to Flamethrower, Ice Beam, Thunderbolt, Earthquake, Fire Blast. I mean, it's got decent coverage as far as your like standard elemental stuff goes. So I mean, I think it's got some use. You know, we've got Steel Beam too if you want to go absolutely ham. That would be kind of nuts. But as far as it being like absolutely insane, I really don't think it's going to be insane, especially considering some things that we're going to talk about later in this thing. I really don't think it's going to be all that insane. I'm going to put it in the B tier. It's definitely nowhere near. It's definitely not as bad as Lugia, but I don't think it's as good as the others. Palkia. Palkia is definitely an interesting mon that I like. I think Palkia is actually going to be pretty nice in this gen, in this format. I don't think it's going to be busted, but I don't think it's going to be bad either. Water and Dragon is a good typing. You only have like one weakness, I think. So it's really, really nice as far as that goes. Yeah, let me fact check that. Yeah, you're weak to Dragon and Fairy. So you have 2 weaknesses and that's it. So I mean, that's really good as far as defensively. It also would pair really well with Comfey. So I definitely could see a Comfey with the weakness policy kind of a strat going on. Draining Kiss into this thing going for whatever it wants to go for. So yeah, does this thing get any kind of like good flying coverage? I don't think it does. Yeah, I don't think that this thing gets anything crazy as far as boosting its speed. So that's one thing. I mean, it gets dual wing beat, but like, who cares? Yeah, this thing doesn't get anything crazy as far as flying, so it's not going to be boosting its speed, so that can hold it back just a little bit. But this thing still hits very hard, and again, its typing is really good. I could definitely see it running with Comfey a lot. I'm going to put it in the A tier. I think it's better than Dialga, but that's just me. Next, Giratina. So we have to talk about Giratina separately as far as its two forms, because one is, they're different, right? They're completely different. Their movesets are the same, but their stats are different, and one is locked in with an item and the other is not. So we'll talk about regular Giratina first. Definitely the better of the two. As far as regular Giratina, it's very bulky. However, it's very much overshadowed by things like Dragapult. Dragapult is literally just better Giratina as far as being the offensive version. And this thing is, while bulky, it's not so bulky that it's going to be absolutely insane. It's not really a viable Dynamax option as far as offensively, unless you run weakness policy and max into it. But I mean, still, I think that you get better value out of things like Dragapult, it being so fast. I just think that the lack of speed on this thing, it really, really hurts it. So it does have Shadow Sneak, which is good. It does have Hex. Aura Sphere for fighting coverage is good, ground coverage. It has Shadow Force, but it also gets Poltergeist now, so you don't have to run the 2-turn move anymore. Poltergeist is definitely useful if you want to use physical. Icy Wind to slow things down, Will-O-Wisp to burn things. I could definitely see this thing as more of a support role, but again, I don't think that you get nearly as much value out of something of this typing as you do with things like Dragapult. So yeah, there's Draco, Dual Wing Beat, Poltergeist. So I think Poltergeist is going to be useful for sure. Great move. And yeah, but I really don't think that this thing's going to be all that scary. I'm going to put it in the C tier. Now, Giratina Origin has all the things that Giratina has, except it's not as bulky and it doesn't get to hold an item. So yeah, no, this thing's terrible. I don't use it. It's not going to be useful. Regular Giratina is better, and this thing is awful. So yeah, don't use it. Reshiram. Now Reshiram has always been a very strong mon, but you just don't see a lot of usage of it in VGC. The typing isn't, as far as typing in this goes, it's not like insane. It definitely will be helpful for things like the Ice Horse, so Glastrier, and of course Calyrex Ice Rider, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. Also with Necrozma Duskmane, which you're probably going to see a lot of, and we'll get into that. Zacian. So I mean, fire typing now is a little bit more viable than it was, just because we have a lot of things that are going to be big and that are weak to fire. So I mean, that really helps its viability. However, I don't think that this thing's going to be all that insane. I could definitely see it running like Specs and just going ham as far as that goes, but ultimately, I think that it's just outmatched by the Kyurem. So Kyurem mixed with Reshiram, I think that's just going to end up being just a better mon in general. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't think that you're going to see this thing all that much. Definitely has good coverage and good stats, like good moves and everything, but like as far as it being better than Kyurem, I really don't believe that that's going to be the case. So I'm going to put it in B tier. Definitely nowhere near as bad as Lugia and Giratina, but I don't think that it's going to be on the same tier as our A tiers. Zekrom, I think Zekrom is actually quite good, especially, you know, with flying typing being king right now. I really think that Zekrom is going to be really nice, especially with beating Kyogre. So Kyogre, I think, is going to be extremely common, and so things that can beat Kyogre are going to be very, very useful. It also, you know, it can definitely do a lot of damage to the other dragons in the tier. It's a little slow, which definitely hurts it, but you know, if we can get some speed boosts on it, maybe some tailwind going on, this thing could definitely be viable. It's got the power, it's got the moves. I think it's got a decent kit, but it just needs a little bit of help. I'm going to put it in the A tier, and basically that's comparing it to what else is here. I don't think it's as good as Kyogre, but it's a good check to it. It's a good counter. I don't know if it's counter, but it's a good check to it anyway. And so I definitely think that it can go there pretty comfortably. Regular Kyurem isn't going to be great. I'm just going to put it there. It's really not great. It needs extra coverage. It just needs a little bit more as far as stats go. So yeah, I don't think it's going to be all that great. However, its fused forms, I do think are going to have some usage. So as far as its fused forms, we have several options here, right? We have the both the one that is mixed with Zekrom and the one that is mixed with Reshiram. So if you're mixed with the Zekrom, you have 125 HP, 100 defense, 90 special defense, 170 attack, which is insane. Still 120 special attack and 95 speed. The 95 speed is the biggest thing that holds this thing back. It's just a little bit slow, but it still is insane. And Kyurem Black gets a lot of really good moves. You do have dual wing beat, which could definitely be useful. Just being able to boost your speed on the physical side when you Dynamax. It also has Dragon Dance. So again, redirection plus Dragon Dance could be very, very viable on this thing. And you can also max into what's it called? Freeze Shock. You could max into Freeze Shock and you basically get 3 turns of full power Freeze Shock. And that's kind of nuts, and it's not going to miss. So that's a very powerful ice move. You also have the Fusion Bolt, which is going to be boosted, and then you've got whatever else you want to run, so probably a dragon type move. So yeah, I think this thing's going to be quite strong, especially in dealing with said Kyurem, or Kyurem Kyogre rather. And so yeah, I think this thing's going to be A tier. This thing's going to be really, really nice. As far as the fire type Kyurem, this thing's actually really good, and it's because of its typing. Its typing allows it to hit nearly everything in the game for at least neutral, and so that really makes a difference, right? Being able to hit everything for at least neutral is kind of nuts. So just on the special side, you've got Ice Burn as well, and so Ice Burn is usually a 2-turn move, but when you max, obviously it becomes a 1-turn move, and Fusion Flare on the same thing. So I think this thing's definitely useful. Freeze Dry is also an option that you have on both of these, and Freeze Dry could be the way that this thing beats Kyogre. It's definitely going to do decent damage, and so we may end up seeing a lot of Freeze Dry over said Ice Burn, and so and that could also lead you to not maxing. So actually clicking the Freeze Dry over maxing and going for whatever you want to go for. So that's definitely an option. Yeah, but I think this thing's pretty viable. I think it's pretty good. I think it's better than the Reshiram, and I'm going to put it in A tier. I still don't think it's as good as Kyogre is going to be, but yeah, I think it's still going to be strong. Xerneas, we all know where Xerneas is going just because, you know, it's Xerneas. And honestly, in my opinion, and again, this is just my opinion, I think that we're going to start seeing mixed Xerneas in this new thing, especially with Hornleech. I think Hornleech is going to be there just for the Kyogres, because I really think Kyogres are going to be everywhere. And then of course you've got Geomancy. So this thing goes for Geomancy. It boosts its special attack, special defense, and speed by 2 stages, and then it just goes nuts. It also has Heal Pulse, which is weird. You're never going to see that, but it's a thing that it can learn. But yeah, I mean, this thing has all the tools to run either a physical or a special set. It's got plenty of coverage both ways, but it's definitely just gonna be Geomancy with some help to keep it alive, and then it just start running through everything. So yeah, this thing's gonna be busted. Yveltal. Now, Yveltal, I think, is gonna be quite strong, actually, and the biggest reason is we are going to be seeing a ton of the Ghost Horse, and we'll get to that in a minute. But Yveltal has been the premier counter in the Ubers tier in singles as far as dealing with the Ghost Horse, and so I think that Calyrex Ghost Rider is going to definitely have some issues against Yveltal. Now, obviously, Yveltal really doesn't like the Kyogre all that much, but I mean, there's going to be a lot of Calyrex Ghost Rider, and we'll get to that. Of course, that's our last mon. But I think Yveltal is going to be extremely viable. I think it's going to be very, very nice. It does have Tailwind, which is a very good move to have. It also carries Snarl. It has Roost, Oblivion Wing, which allows you to heal HP, which is really good, and it also gives you a max option, so you can boost your speed and do things like that. Focus Blast, for hitting things that normally would be able to beat you, and of course the dark typing to be able to take out the horse. So yeah, I think this thing's going to be viable. I think it's going to be actually quite good. It does get access to Lash Out now, which is actually really good. I think Lash Out's a great move for this thing. Taunt as well to stop setup. So Sucker Punch also for for being able to pick off KOs here and there. Yeah, I think this thing's going to be great. I really think this thing's going to be really nice. And I would go so far to put it in S tier as far as being kind of an anti-max option. And actually more of a defensive maxing option that's actually somewhat viable because it can put out that the damage if it needs to, but it also can sit there and mitigate damage from your opponent. I mean, imagine if you're sitting there snarling the Calyrex Ghost Rider. It might be weakness policy, but after 2 snarls, it's going to be back to neutral, and then after that, you're just hurting it even more. And it really isn't going to be able to touch you all that much, so I think it's going to be quite viable. So I believe in Yveltal. Zygarde. Now, Zygarde's a very interesting mon to see in this format, and I think it's going to be quite good. This might actually be the first time we start seeing 1000 Waves used because it traps. So can you imagine 1000 Waves with Perish Song? That's a thing that could happen. And I think that it's much more viable in this than it is in doubles. Or than in singles rather. 1000 Arrows is a million times better in doubles than it is. But yeah, I think 1000 Arrows is good against things like Ho-Oh, things that are off the ground, being able to hit them. But in this, 1000 Waves might just be super useful. Yeah, there are a lot of flying types, but I don't know. 1000 Waves, I feel like, has the ability to kind of go nuts against a lot of teams. If you don't have something on the ground, you're going to get trapped, and then you could get stuck with this thing setting up on them. So yeah, it could definitely be dangerous. This thing has Coil, it has Bulldoze, it has Haze, which is something you never see on this thing, but definitely could be a thing. Glare is very dangerous. You have to respect Glare no matter what. It's an insane move. It gets Rock Slide. What else does it get that could be used? It gets a lot of really good stuff, actually. And Dragon Dance, definitely useful. Yeah, I think this thing's actually quite good. And it's got a couple different forms, right? So you've got the 10% form, which is pretty fast and not bulky. And then you've got the 50% form, and then you've got 100%, which everyone's going to be running the 100% form. No one's going to be running Aura Break. So, I mean, that's just, it is what it is. As far as Doggo form, I don't think it's going to be all that viable. Yes, it's fast, but that can be beaten by a lot of ice types in the tier, you know, especially the 2 Kyurem forms, and even the 3rd Kyurem form. Anything that runs ice or even dragon, a fast dragon will beat it. And so if something else sets up Tailwind and goes for a dragon move, this thing's going to drop before it can do anything. So I don't think that this is going to be all that great. However, regular Zygarde I think does have some viability for sure. And I think it's going to be absolutely insane. And we're going to put those in the same tier because they're essentially the same mon. But I wanted to put that on there just to be aware. You're going to be seeing Zygarde completes, and it's going to be difficult to take down. It's very, very bulky, and yeah, but there's a lot of ice types out there. There's a lot of fairy types that can really do a bunch of damage to it. And so as long as you keep bashing it pretty hard and try to keep it in check, it definitely can go down. But Dynamaxing, it can be dangerous. It can be very dangerous if it Dynamaxes, it takes a big hit and then just gains all that HP back. It can be very scary. So yeah, Cosmog and Cosmoem are legal now. We all know where those are going. I'm just kidding. Yeah, no, they're bottom tier. Yeah, they're never mind. We're not even talking about those. Solgaleo, I don't think is insane. It's good, but it's not great. Its typing is okay. Its coverage is okay. Its stats are okay, but it's not insane. It's not fantastic. At least to me, it's not. And so, yeah, it gets a lot of good stuff, but compared to a lot of other things, and especially compared to when it combines with Necrozma, which we'll get to in just a second, it becomes quite underwhelming in my opinion. So I'm going to put it in the C tier. I don't think it really hangs all by itself. It's just, to me, it's just not that great. Lunala is decent, but it's not great. It's not great, especially with it having those 4 times weaknesses that are really crucial. You know, you're gonna have things like the Ghost Horse that are out there, and that's going to absolutely destroy you. You're going to have things like Yveltal, and you're not really going to be able to touch it. So it's going to definitely have a lot of really popular counters that there's not really a whole lot that it can do about it. It could set screens, be like a bulky screen setter, but like you could have like anything else. You might as well run like a Regieleki and just set screens that way. It's just as viable, at least to me. So yeah, I don't think that this thing's going to be insane. Meteor Beam Expanding Force is pretty cool, but yeah, I don't think that this thing's going to be insane. We're going to put this down here with Solgaleo in C tier. Next is regular Necrozma. Now, regular Necrozma isn't awful, I guess, but it's not great because it doesn't get all of its good coverage and it doesn't get its good stats until it combines with Solgaleo or Lunala, respectively. So let's take a look at these stats. We've got 97 HP, 107 attack, 101 defense, 127 special attack, 89 special defense, 79 speed. That's pretty garbage, to be honest. I mean, it's not really that bulky, although it does have a good ability. It doesn't have that great of stats. 127 special attack really isn't insane. It's passable, but it's not great. And all the stuff that it can do really is just outmatched by its combined forms. And so regular form isn't going to be great. So I don't see this thing being all that viable. Yeah, it's going in C tier. I really don't think it's all that great. Now, Necrozma Duskmane, however, that's going in S tier. This is absolutely S tier every day of the week. No questions about it. This thing is great. Really great typing, and of course, having Prism Armor, you're going to see a ton of these with weakness policy. You're going to see these things all over the place. It's going to be insane watching this thing go crazy. So, I mean, Psychic Fangs is the thing. Ally Switch, very interesting. I don't think you'll see it on this. I think this will be more of an offensive kind of thing. Swords Dance, Earthquake, Trick Room. This thing is actually a very viable Trick Room setter, so that's a thing. You could also run Imprison Trick Room, but again, I don't think that this is the mon you want to do that on. Photon Geyser is the biggest thing that this thing gets, because Photon Geyser chooses whether or not it's physical or special, depending on whether it's higher. So you can run this on the physical one, and it'll run it as physical as long as you are higher in your physical attack than your special attack. This thing's insane. I definitely see this thing being used a ton, especially as a check to Xerneas. I think this thing's going to be a really good Xerneas check, and you're going to see a ton of it. Now, as far as Dawn Wings goes, its typing is the biggest thing that holds it back, at least to me. Yeah, being Psychic Ghost isn't great. Having those 4x weaknesses to Ghost and Dark with all of these Ghost and Dark types that are going to be very, very common. You know, Yveltal, you're going to have the Ghost Horse, which we'll talk about in just a second. You're going to have those in top tier. You're going to be seeing those a ton. And it's weak to both of those. And so, yes, it has a good ability, but no, those two weaknesses combined, of 4x weaknesses, mind you, makes it's going to struggle. It's going to struggle a lot. And so while it has good coverage, while it has good moves and everything, its typing really shoots it in the foot. I'm going to put it in B tier. It has viability. It's not as bad as what's below it, but it's still not going to be insane. Now we get to Gen 8 and all of the new toys that we got in Gen 8. We got a lot of new things in Gen 8 that are considered restricted, and some of them deserve it and some of them don't, and we'll get to that. So Zacian regular form. So Zacian regular form still gets the Intrepid Sword ability. It just gets to hold a different item, whatever item you want to hold. And, you know, it just has, you know, a little bit different stats. Quite a bit less attack, and just a little bit less speed. But you can hold like a choice band, which definitely could help out, but again, you know, you're locked into a move. And another thing to consider about these mods is these can't max. Zacian and Zamazenta cannot max, so you know, you're kind of locked in as far as what you can do. And I don't think Eternatus can max either. So you're a little confined as far as what you can do. This isn't your max option. It leaves your max option open to something else. So that actually makes Zacian just a little bit less viable. But then you consider what its signature move does when it's running the Crown form. It does extra damage to things that are Dynamaxed. Now we can use Dynamaxed Mons in doubles, and so this thing's going to have a move that does a lot of damage to those, especially things like Xerneas. This thing's going to be a really good help against Xerneas, and it's going to be hard walled by the Necrozma. So yeah, it's going to be good. It's not going to be insane. Crown is definitely better here because of that move, so I'm going to put it in A tier. I really want to put it in S tier. I'm really close to putting it in S tier, but I don't think it's going to be all that insane. And regular Zacian can't go any lower than B tier, and honestly, it's teetering on A tier as well. Again, this is just my opinion, and again, if you disagree with anything on this list, I want to know down in the comments below. Hit me up. Zamazenta, this thing's garbage. Zamazenta is terrible. And, you know, we showed it off in a Wi-Fi battle the other day, where we're doing the SU tier. The SU tier sits between Ubers and OU in the in singles, and so you know it's an okay mon, I guess, but in singles it's pretty bad. Yeah, both forms are pretty bad. Don't use this mon. It's bad. It's nowhere near as good as Zacian. Zacian's very good. This thing's very bad. Eternatus is busted. I think Eternatus is incredibly strong. It definitely has a lot of ways to be very, very scary. Dynamax Cannon, of course, dealing twice the damage if the target is Dynamaxed. You've also got Eterna Beam, which you can click while Dynamaxed. Or, no, this thing can't Dynamax. What am I saying? But yeah, I mean, yeah, Dynamax Cannon is going to be all over the place. Poison moves are going to be all over the place. This thing can definitely spread some damage all over the place. This thing's actually quite strong. It's quite bulky. It does a lot of things really, really well. 140 HP, 95 defenses, 130 speed, 145 attack, or special attack rather. It's pretty dang good. It's pretty dang good. And of course, beating fairies, you know, you've got things like Togekiss that definitely don't want to be around this. You've got things, especially like Tapu Fini, that do not want to deal with this thing. This thing will just knock it right out. So I think this is an A tier mon. I think it's actually quite good. I think it's great, actually. I think it's really, really good. So yeah, Eternatus, really good mon. Regular Calyrex, this thing's garbage. We're not even going to talk about it. Yeah, regular Calyrex is so bad. Its stats are terrible. It doesn't get any really great. It doesn't get insane moves until it combines with the horses. It's not good. It's just not a good mon, so we're just gonna keep moving. However, once it combines with the horses, this thing goes nuts. And look at all of these moves. My gosh, this thing's complicated. Yeah, but with 80 all around, except for HP at 100, it's terrible. So let's take a look at Ice Rider first. 165 attack, 150 defense, 130 special defense, 50 speed. This thing is going to be insane. I'm just telling you right now, this thing is going to be insane. If you thought that Glastrier was a problem, wait for Glastrier 2.0, because that's all this thing is. This thing is going to be absolutely nuts. It's going to be such a pain to deal with. It gets such good moves. It has such high attack, and especially in Trick Room. And I'm pretty sure this thing can set its own Trick Room now. Yeah, it can. This thing can set its own Trick Room. S tier, every day of the week. This thing's going to be insane. Now, one other thing that I saw that makes me extremely scared is I'm fairly certain that once this thing combines with the... now, I may be wrong in this, but I thought, yep, there it is. This right here, TM62 Speed Swap, this is dangerous. Imagine it having a Regieleki partner and speed swapping with Regieleki. That's terrifying. That thing would then be the fastest thing on the field, blowing through everything. That's absolutely terrifying to me. So yeah, it has a fast partner. It can speed swap, or it can have Trick Room. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. This thing is gonna be ridiculous. Yeah, and Ghost Horse, no surprise, also going to be in the S tier. This thing hits like an absolute truck, and I'm pretty sure that its signature move hits both targets. Astral Barrage, yeah, I'm pretty sure that it hits both targets. User at opposing Pokemon. Yeah, not at the opposing Pokemon, at opposing Pokemon. It hits both. This thing's insane. This thing's absolutely insane. Oh my gosh. 165 special attack, 100 special defense, 150 speed. It's so fast. It hits so hard. Oh my gosh. And it's really not like 100 HP and 80 defense. Like, it can still take 1 or 2 hits when Dynamaxed. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And of course, being Psychic Ghost, that makes it, that gives it some weaknesses, but it's so fast. And of course, Grim Neigh and Chilling Neigh picking up KOs, and especially with Astral Barrage, you pick up double KOs, you're at +2, click it again. I mean, you lose in the first 2 turns if you lead wrong. This thing's incredible. It's going to be there a lot. You're going to see this thing a ton. So yeah, definitely expect to see a ton of the horse around. Definitely a thing. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video all the way to the end and watching our tier list. So let me know down in the comments below what you think of my tier list, how you would change your own tier list. Yeah, just let me know what you think. I think that this is a pretty good tier list. But again, this is all my opinion. I would love to know what yours is. Leave a like on the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and yeah, of course, join the Discord as well. We haven't plugged the Discord today, so it's a lot of fun on there. We have a good time. And so yeah, later this week we're gonna have a Wi-Fi battle, and we're gonna have a regular VGC episode on Friday. I just wanted to have a time to be able to talk about this while it's still fresh on everybody's minds. And I think this is a pretty good tier list. So thank you for watching. Just have a good week. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.